This is the oldest temple unearthed anywhere on this planet. It was built 11,500 years ago.
These pillars dates back 11,600 years. It appears to be purposely buried at the same time of the Younger Dryas climate catastrophe. This is fascinating.
Göbekli Tepe was a game changer, major megalithic site, which is at least 5,500 years older.
On a hill in Turkey, massive stone pillars rise from the earth, older than the Egyptian pyramids and older than even writing itself. The carvings of animals, shapes, and cryptic figures on these structures have baffled experts for decades. Now, artificial intelligence has stepped into the mystery, scanning patterns no human eye could fully trace. What it uncovered challenges assumptions about the world's first monument and the people who built it. Before we explore the discoveries, it's worth returning to the moment that sparked global fascination.
So, Göbekli Tepe, brother, if there is such a thing as an ancient conspiracy theory, it's this. So,
the unearthing of Göbekli Tepe. That single event reshaped archaeology and set the ball rolling. The site that rewrote history. For ages, archaeologists and historians have each told the simple story about how civilization started. Their stories and theories have all seemed to add up to the fact that the first people learned to farm. Once the early people learned to grow their own food, they didn't see any need to always gather food or go hunting all the time. In learning this, they were able to settle down in one place, build villages, and create a growing community. In this old way of thinking, farming was the key that unlocked everything else, from villages to great empires. But the arrival of a discovery turned that whole idea on its head. In southeastern Turkey, a place called Göbekli Tepe was hiding under a hill. First noticed way back in the 1960s, it wasn't until a real dig started in 1996 that its true importance became clear. What they found was a series of huge stone circles with massive T-shaped pillars, some weighing as much as 20 tons. These pillars were covered in detailed carvings of animals like boars, foxes, and snakes. The most unbelievable part of these structures was that they were built over 12,000 years ago, thousands of years before the pyramids in Egypt. To put this time into perspective, humans at the time were still living as hunter-gatherers with no farming, no towns, and nothing like a survival structure in place. So how could a society of people constantly on the move build something so huge? Göbekli Tepe was proof enough that the early ancestors were much more advanced than anyone had thought. It suggests that a shared belief system and a desire to come together for ceremonies might have been what made people gather in one place, long before they ever thought about farming. It was a new way of thinking about how civilization began. But as remarkable as this discovery was, it left explorers with a bigger puzzle and a lot of questions. From what the carvings were supposed to be to what they meant, down to why the place was built. For decades, the ancient carvings have been a wonder to scholars who have tirelessly tried to guess their meaning. It was also a tedious task because it was almost impossible trying to decipher a language they couldn't understand. These carvings were now messages left by people who saw the world in a way we no longer can. It was debatable. As some researchers pointed out, these markings could just have been nothing more than art. But to those who know secrets of the world hide behind markings, these carvings were more than just art. Soon enough, the meanings to them would mean much more than anyone could have possibly imagined. When looking at the pillars for the first time, obvious animal carvings like vultures, snakes, boars, and foxes are seen on the structure. These are not the type of carvings anyone would expect from a set of early hunters. These symbols are often snarling and aggressive, sometimes with male organs on full display, and they appear again and again across the site. The T-shaped pillars they are carved on are believed by some historians to be figures of humans, with arms and hands carved into their sides and belts around their waists. Both these carvings of human-like pillars and powerful animal symbols raised a lot of questions about whether or not the animals were totems for different clans or tribes. Some questioned if the symbols were part of a ritual or form of shamanism, where people took on animal spirits. Regardless of what the answer might have been, what remains is the mystery behind the symbols. But what's particularly interesting is the repetition of these symbols. While each of the big circles at Göbekli Tepe has a slightly different feel, with some having more foxes and others having more snakes, the same symbols show up everywhere. This makes everyone believe that the people who built the site shared a common language or belief system, even if they were from different groups. But no one could figure out what that language was. The most famous example is Pillar 43, also known as the Vulture Stone. This pillar in question was covered in carvings that seemed to tell a story. There were obvious carvings of a vulture, a scorpion, a few other animals, and a notable headless human figure with a phallic symbol. For decades, archaeologists and others have tried to figure out what this scene means. Some thought it was a ritual of death and rebirth, with the vulture carrying the soul away, while others saw it as a kind of ancient map or a record of a specific event. There were also handbag symbols that appeared in some carvings that have even sparked theories about ancient alien visitors. The big problem was that there was no Rosetta Stone or a key to help unlock their meaning. The conventional research methods had hit a wall quite a number of times, so much so that for years observers were stuck, staring at these carvings and only seeing what they wanted to see. The research was limited by human biases and the sheer volume of data. But what if a mind without those limitations could see patterns humans could not? The birth of AI archaeology. For a long time, archaeology was so slow and difficult that a single archaeologist could spend their whole career studying a handful of artifacts. But now, everything has changed, as the digital age has changed the game completely. To crack the code of Göbekli Tepe, researchers first had to create a complete digital copy of the entire site. They used technologies like LiDAR, which uses lasers to create a detailed map of the site's surface, and 3D scanning to capture every nook and cranny of the pillars and their carvings. These advanced technologies easily allowed them to build a massive, high-resolution digital database of every single symbol. It was a perfect dataset for a new kind of brain to analyze. The goal wasn't to ask for the machine to provide answers to what the carvings meant. Instead, the work of the AI was to find a common link in the whole database. Scientists and archaeologists used computer vision and neural networks to find relationships between the symbols that were too subtle or complex for any human to notice. Just like how these experts in the field were able to spot a boar and a snake on the same pillar and think it's a random pairing, this technology could do things more directly. The AI could go through every single carving at the site and find that the boar always appears near a certain star pattern, or that the snake's position changes depending on its relationship to other animals. It was the perfect tool they needed all this time to see beyond the surface. All the years that scientists, geologists, and archaeologists spent trying to compare the carvings on a dozen pillars could easily be done by this new technology in a matter of minutes. In addition, it could find correlations between a carving on one side of the site and another 100 yards away, something that would be nearly impossible for a human brain to keep track of. With this new introduction, the data wasn't just a list of carvings, it was a blueprint. And as the AI began to process it all, the first shocking results started to emerge. The animal symbols at Göbekli Tepe detected by this new technology didn't seem to be random. Not only were they not just a collection of animals or symbols, but the carvings were also a detailed map of the night sky. It was also revealed that the animals, which everyone thought were just simple artistic expressions, were actually constellations. The AI was able to detect specific patterns where a fox carving would consistently appear in the place of what we now call the star system for Sirius, and a scorpion would be found in the location of the constellation Scorpio. This meant Göbekli Tepe was not just a temple, it was a celestial observatory built by hunter-gatherers to track the movement of the stars and planets. This realization brought to light the Vulture Stone, which is the most famous carving on Pillar 43. For years, everyone thought the carving was a scene of death or a bizarre ritual. But the AI's analysis revealed a perfect matchup with the positions of the constellations on a specific day over 12,800 years ago. This date lines up almost exactly with the Younger Dryas impact event, a time when a comet or its fragments likely hit the Earth. This impact caused a major global disaster, leading to a sudden and very cold period, widespread floods, and huge chaos around the world. So the Vulture Stone was an incredible piece in time that showed a single permanent record of a catastrophic event that took place long before anyone could have understood what was happening. This sole record completely changed the perception of how the early humans were viewed. It shows that these hunter-gatherers weren't just trying to get by their day. They were highly observant. They had a deep understanding of the cosmos and the ability to record a major disaster. They built Göbekli Tepe as the world's oldest historical record, proof of what they witnessed. If Göbekli Tepe was really a calendar, what was it counting down to? The AI didn't just find a record of the past, it found a warning for the future. The most astonishing discovery of the symbols goes beyond the Younger Dryas impact. From what was revealed, it only points to a complex narrative about a series of recurring global cataclysms. The builders of Göbekli Tepe seem to have had a long-term view of history. The analysis, both from scientists and the possible results from AI, showed a pattern of multiple cycles and sub-cycles, suggesting these people weren't just reacting to a single disaster. It was pretty much clear that these early people well understood that the universe followed rhythms, and that these rhythms could be dangerous to life on the planet. It's as if they believed the world goes through a series of great cleansings, and they wanted to leave a record of it for others to find. This new idea completely changed what everyone thought the monuments were for. They were not just built as a place for simple worship or celebration, but as a response to a massive threat. These monuments were a way to share a warning with a world that didn't exist yet. Even the deliberate burial of the site, with some of the carvings facing inward, seems to be part of the plan. It was an act of preservation that made sure what they had hidden could survive the next great disaster. While these are mainly theories, one cannot help but notice the AI's analysis is statistically verifiable and is also backed by geological evidence. But who were these early people, and how did they have this knowledge? A lost civilization or inherited knowledge? The people who built Göbekli Tepe were hunter-gatherers from the pre-pottery Neolithic age.
After discovering the first T-shaped pillar buried at the site, he soon found more of these massive structures.
They traveled within a radius of about 200 kilometers of the site, gathering to work on this massive project. They didn't have permanent homes or farms. They had stone tools. And yet, they managed to create one of the most incredible monuments in human history. How could they have known so much about the stars and cosmic events? One idea that has spun across experts and scholars alike is the Atlantis theory, which, in a more serious context, suggests that they were the last survivors of a more advanced civilization that existed before the Younger Dryas cataclysm. This would have been a group of people who had a sophisticated understanding of science and engineering and passed their knowledge to the hunter-gatherers. even though there isn't much archaeological proof for such a civilization, since a global disaster would have likely wiped out most of its traces. It's an idea that many people find fascinating. Another idea, and perhaps a more likely one, is that the knowledge was simply inherited. For thousands of years, nomadic people living outdoors and under the stars would have paid close attention to the sky. They would have noticed the regular cycles of constellations and the sudden, violent disruptions from comets or meteors. This deep, almost instinctual knowledge of the cosmos could have been passed down through loras and symbols from one generation to the next. The people of Göbekli Tepe simply found a way to make that knowledge permanent, carving it into stone so it would last forever. Regardless of where the knowledge came from, the builders' intent is clear. They were not just a simple society carving rocks. They were a group deeply concerned with the survival of their species. They created Göbekli Tepe as a safe place for information, a way to make sure that a critical warning would survive for thousands of years. As these discoveries open up a deeper philosophical well, other questions begin to spring up. Is this just a record of history, or proof of a consciousness that saw time in cycles, not straight lines? And what does this tell us about humanity itself? In recent times, the usual way of thinking and reasoning can be very linear. Time is seen as a straight line, with a clear beginning and an end. But that ideology was quite different from that of the early people. The people who built Göbekli Tepe saw a lot of things differently. Their symbols, with their cycles of destruction and renewal, point to a mind that saw time as a great, repeating circle. They didn't see themselves as separate from nature. They saw themselves as participants in a vast cosmic drama. The symbols weren't just drawings on a stone alone. It felt as if they were communicating with the universe. They also had a deep connection to the sky and the natural world, one that has almost gotten lost over thousands of years. They knew they were a part of the universe too. With this new understanding, the rituals at Göbekli Tepe take on a whole new meaning. It's likely that the ceremonies weren't about praying to a god in the sky, but more about observing the sky, predicting future events, and performing rituals to keep the universe in balance. The T-shaped pillars, which are believed to be human-like figures, might have been a way for them to represent a divine intermediary, or a bridge between the earth and the heavens. They were a way for the builders to communicate with the powerful forces of the cosmos. A modern scientific mind looks for facts and proofs, and it can sometimes struggle to understand this type of symbolic thinking. A literal mind sees a fox and thinks, "That's a fox." With the AI, it reads meanings into things and positions them on a pillar that has a specific meaning in a larger message. It saw the connections that a human mind, trained in cause and effect, might overlook. After looking at the past, with the help of AI and other advanced technology, what the present and even the future hold has potential. Because Göbekli Tepe isn't the only stone hill in Turkey that is mysterious, others are waiting to be decoded. Göbekli Tepe's sister sites. For a long time, archaeologists thought Göbekli Tepe was one of a kind. It was the only major site of its kind from that period, making it feel like a strange, isolated wonder. But over the last few years, a whole new group of similar sites has been discovered in the same region, all sharing the same kind of T-shaped pillars and ancient carvings. These places have been given the name Stone Hills. This discovery suggests that Göbekli Tepe wasn't an isolated project. As it turns out, it was indeed a part of a much larger, organized cultural network. The most well-known of these new sites is Karahan Tepe. At first glance, it looks a lot like Göbekli Tepe. It has the same T-pillars and circular enclosures carved into the bedrock. But Karahan Tepe also has some unique features, like a large room with a dozen human statues carved right into the stone.
They're covered in these engravings. So this is a fox. There's vultures here. There's bear. There's wild boar. And here,
one of its most interesting carvings is a pillar with a snake that looks very similar to the snake carvings at Göbekli Tepe. Another is a pillar with a vulture, which could be a direct link to the famous vulture stone earlier mentioned in the video. Using the same AI model that worked at Göbekli Tepe, researchers are now studying Karahan Tepe and the other stone hills. While it has yet to be confirmed that AI is already starting to find connections between the symbolic systems of these different sites, AI's contribution to understanding these complex carvings is still emerging. The fact that the same symbols appear in multiple locations shows that the builders were part of a widespread culture that shared knowledge and beliefs. This network of ceremonial centers might have been a way for these ancient people to pool their knowledge and resources to survive the dramatic changes happening in their world. The success of the AI project at Göbekli Tepe has completely changed the future of archaeology. This method of using computer vision and neural networks to find hidden patterns can now be applied to other prehistoric sites around the globe. With every new site analyzed, the picture becomes clearer. Do you think the builders of Göbekli Tepe were smart enough to leave a cosmic warning? Or do you think the AI simply found patterns that confirm our own modern fears? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell on our channel so you never miss any of our uploads. If you enjoyed this video, click on the next video on your screen to watch more videos like this one.